expenditure reports that you're going to have to complete and submit to us on a monthly basis. So without any further ado, let's get started with our slideshow. So in FY23, the Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeship issued out 2 rounds of grants. Round 1 is listed here, and you can see the occupations in which are being serviced during that grant period. That one started on January 1st of 2023. And that one's to serve a total of 725 apprentices. Next slide, please. So this would be your round. All of you are listed here, and the occupations in which you guys are looking to serve. This is to serve a total of 169 apprentices across the 18-month grant period. Ultimately, the plan here is for these grants to obviously be running simultaneously, and for you all to, if in any way, shape, or form, possibly help each other or work together, if necessary. But ultimately, uh, everybody is working towards the same goal of placing apprentices into the occupations, getting them registered with USDOL, and training up some staff for the purposes of meeting the needs of either yourselves as the employers or the employers that you are partnering with. Um, the expectation of this department and this office are that your grants will get started right away, and that in the first 6 months you'll work to complete and get all of your registered apprenticeship programs registered with USDOL, if you haven't already done so. If you have already done so, then you can get started right away with placing apprentices into your program. But ultimately, the goal here is within that first 6 months to start registering and registering apprentices with USDOL through their rapid system, and reporting on the services that you're providing to them through the activity reports that we'll go over a little bit later in this presentation. Next slide, please. So one very important thing for you to remember about all your participants is that they all have to be registered with our one-stop system. In the past, we used to tell everybody to just refer all your clients and all your participants over to the one stop to do so. That is no longer necessary. Um, this job source website that you see here on this screen, https://jobsource.nj.gov, allows for you to create a free account for your participants, which does register them with the one-stop system, um, and ultimately allows for them to have tools and services that the one-stop offers available to them right online, for them to utilize for the purposes of job search, but also for just preparation for work, um, and just some basic information about some cost of living and stuff like that in the state of New Jersey. So this is definitely a useful tool. And what you'll need to do is have all of your participants, once they've been accepted into this GAINS program, log on to this job source website and register themselves. It's not a long process. Ultimately, it just allows for them to be registered with the Department of Labor one-stop system. Next slide. Okay, and from there, I'm going to hand this over to my colleague Tammy Noverton, who is your technical assistant specific to the GAINS grant, and she'll get into a little more detail in reference to the program itself.
Hello, everyone. I believe I've met a majority of you, so welcome again. And those of you who I haven't met, hello. So as Bill mentioned, I'll be your grant representative for the GAINS grant. So if you have any questions or issues as you progress through your contract, I'm your gal. You can reach out to me anytime, call or email, and I'll get back to you and help you navigate this process. So with the next few slides, we're going to review some of the responsibilities and parameters of the grant. So as you all know, your contract is for 18 months and it's for the period of June 1st, 2023 until November 30th of 2024. Each month, you'll be required to complete one activity report and one expenditure report, which will always be due on the 15th of every month. You'll always be reporting for the month prior. So, for example, since your contract began on June 1st, your first reports for the month of June will be due by July 15th. And as Bill mentioned, he's going to review more of that reporting process with you later in this presentation. You're expected within the first 6 months of your contract start date to get your program approved by USDOL if you haven't done so already, and place your first class of apprentices that you must be registered with USDOL through that rapid system. So with your contract starting on June 1st, this means that by December of 2023, your program should be registered and the first group of apprentices should be starting. And the reasoning behind this timeline is it provides you with about a year to carry out any apprentice-related grant activity before your contract ends. And by the end of your contract, you're expected to have placed and registered the proposed contracted number of individuals into your registered apprenticeship program. Next thing we're going to review is some of the grant parameters to keep in mind as you're organizing your program to begin activity. So who can participate in your grant? So Gaines is funded using New Jersey tax money, and as such, the expectation is for the funding to benefit the New Jersey economy. So therefore, your participating apprentices must be residents of New Jersey, and your partnering employers must be New Jersey-based or have a presence in New Jersey. Another thing to note is that each employer partner that's added to your grant, which this can continue throughout the length of your contract, we're going to check them in our employer account systems to ensure that they do not owe any outstanding tax liabilities. If an employer partner is found to have a liability, they will not be able to participate in the grant or receive grant funding while this issue is unresolved. When we perform the check, if a liability is found, we'll email you and make you aware of that process and provide you with the contact information for you to let your partner know that they need to get that resolved using that information. Are there other requirements for apprentices to participate? So all apprentices must be registered with USDOL and issued an apprentice ID number to begin participation in the Gaines Grant. This means no front-loaded related technical instruction can occur, and only activity and related expenses can be reported on a specific apprentice as of that registration date. Also, all apprentices must be earning a minimum of $16 an hour. Of course, your specific wage requirements should follow the USDOL guidelines for that occupation. And lastly, all apprentices must be hired with your participating employers on a full-time basis. What are the requirements of the OJT wage reimbursement? So for those of you with OJT wage reimbursement built into your budget, here are some of the requirements for payment. So your apprentices must be paid at a minimum of that $16 an hour. Your reimbursements cannot exceed 40 hours a week for a 52-week period. Payroll records for each apprentice are required when requesting reimbursement, and the records should clearly show the apprentice's name, period of work, rate of pay, and the hours worked. These documents should be uploaded to the expenditure report for the applicable month so that we can check that information. OJT reimbursement is only for regular pay. That means overtime, holiday, and PTO time are not reimbursable. Details of the reimbursement request should be entered on the OJT chart within your activity report. The total reimbursement calculated should match the amount that you bill for on the expenditure report. And again, Bill will go over that page with you shortly in the next few slides. For prior grant recipients, apprentices funded through a prior Gaines grant or OJT contract are not eligible to participate as an apprentice in this new Gaines contract. And lastly, OJT wage reimbursements should not exceed the allotted cost per head in your budget. And this will vary from grantee to grantee, but I can provide you with the specific cost per head for your grant if you need a reminder of what that is. So that concludes the overview of the grant requirements. I'm going to turn it back over to Bill, who will review the completing of the monthly reports in IGX.
Right, and bear with us because now we got to switch over to a different slideshow. So I want to make sure that that does that without causing any difficulties. Tammy, you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
All right, great, perfect. So as Tammy said, and as we alluded to earlier, and to many of you during our calls while we were processing and getting your contracts ready for signature, Now for the fun part. We will start now getting into the monthly activity and expenditure reports and going over what will be necessary for you to complete on a monthly basis. As Tammy said earlier, each one of these reports will be required to be completed on a monthly basis. The activity report is, as you would expect, going to list all the activity that's provided to your participants throughout that month prior, and the expenditure report will provide us with information on your expenses for the prior month. Always remember that pay attention when you're starting your reports to make sure that you're opening the report for the previous month. So if you're in the month of July and you're starting a report, you should be starting a June report, not a July report. When you're in August and you're starting a report, you should be starting a July report and not an August report. Always pay attention to that and make sure that you're choosing the right one. If you ever have any questions or concerns that you might not be starting the wrong one, reach out to us and check, and we will assist you rather than starting it and having you do everything and then us having to pull it out and redo it all over again. I'd rather not have you guys have to do that. So always feel free to reach out and ask any questions at any time, and we'll assist you. Um, to ensure that the reports that you're starting and completing are accurate. Once you get a hold of it and you're comfortable, it won't really be an issue. But in the beginning, sometimes starting the right report is a little bit of a hassle. But it will get more comfortable as time goes on. You will do 18 of these, so I promise you, at some point, it'll become old hat, as they say. So we're going to start here um, with some basic information. So, as Tammy and I have both already said, as part of the administration of your grant, your organization is required to complete monthly activity and expenditure reports. They're due on the 15th of every month and should reflect the activity and expenses for the prior month. The following presentation will assist you in completing those steps. This is a step-by-step user guide, so please know this will help you to, and we will provide this slideshow to you. This will help you to complete your reports both in the initial month and then any month coming afterwards. Also, just for the purposes of giving everybody some comfort, I know it's the 12th of July and we're saying it's due on the 15th of every month. We will be very flexible in this first month. As long as you get it in sometime between now and the end of July, we are very much okay with that being the case. Work to try and get it in as quickly as you possibly can. That'll allow for us to review it and get it approved, especially if you have any expenses to report. Remember, our expenses are reimbursement only, so you cannot expense us for things that weren't already expended by your organization. You can only you're always requesting reimbursement. That's for every line item, including the OJT. So first things first, you'll have to log into the IGX database. As you had to do for the application process, this is the same process. You'll log on to the njdol.intelligrants.com web address, put in your username and password, and hit the login button. Once you've done so, it'll bring you into your dashboard. When you get onto your dashboard, you'll notice that under My Tasks, you'll find your organization's application. If for some reason your application is not listed under My Tasks, you can go to the Searches button at the top and then look for your gains application. You can do the drop down and look for gains, or just type in the search gains, GAINS, and it'll bring up anything that's attributed to that for your organization. And then you can open it from there. But once you find it, whether it's in your My Tasks or you find it through the searches tab, you'll click on the link, the hyperlink under info or name. Here is the searches tab. So once you click searches, it'll bring up a document search. You'll click on the drop down menu under type, choose growing apprenticeship in non-traditional sectors or gains. Make sure you're choosing the application for 2023 and it'll pull up your document. Then you'll click on the name and that'll bring you into the application. Once you're in the application, it's going to look exactly the same way as it did when you were creating your application. On the left-hand side, before starting your reports, you're going to want to go to your employer sponsor page, which is the same page that you created when you were completing your application. And you'll want to review that employer sponsor page of your application and add any new partners that you have for the month. So if you've added an employer partner this month, you need to add them there. It needs to include all information for that employer sponsor, including the FEIN number. That FEIN number allows for us to check and make sure that that employer or sponsor do not have a liability with the department before we are able to make any payments that would be going out to them. So it's very important that you go to the employer sponsor page before you start completing your reports on a monthly basis. If it's necessary that you add any employers or sponsors, what we suggest that you do is you make it a point to check this page every month and just check it and make sure it's accurate. As long as it's accurate, then you can move on to the next step. If not, add the employer or sponsor that's necessary, um, and then save the page. Once you've saved the page, then it would also be helpful to notify us that you've added any employer sponsors so that we can go in and do that verification for liability. As you see here, if you need to add an employer sponsor to your employer sponsor page, you'll use the plus button just like you did during the application process. You'll add their information. All fields are necessary to be completed in the white section. The only fields that you will not touch are in the blue section. Once you've completed adding all the employer sponsors necessary to this page, make sure you click save. We will then verify that the employers or the sponsor do not have a liability. And once we do so, we'll check in the boxes in the blue area, um, and update this page as well. The liabilities that we check for are that make sure that there is no liability in excess of $750. Once you've checked the employer sponsor page, you're going to want to use that left-handed um, part of the screen in blue and scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you'll find related documents at the bottom. Once you find the related documents section, if that arrow that's next to it pointing down is pointing towards related documents, click on the arrow. It'll open the related documents folder. If it's pointed down, then you'll see it as you see on the screen here. And the first step is you'll initiate a related document. Click on initiate related document, and that will expand the contents of the section so that we can move forward into starting the report. Once you click on initiate, it will bring up this field where you're now going to search for the document in which you want to start. The parent document will already be filled in. You'll click on the drop down under available documents, and you'll search for the activity report that is specific to the month that you're trying to report. As we said earlier, the report would always be for the prior month. So if it's July, you're starting your June report. Make sure you pay attention to the year at the end, because our grants run over 18 months and they do run into new calendar years. So you might open that and see a February 2023 and a February 2024. If you're trying to report for February 2023, choose that. If you're trying to report for February 2024, choose that, but please don't confuse them, because ultimately the reports being in order are what allow for us to go back and historically check things on your grant. Once you've chosen the proper available document, you'll click the create button and that will start your report. First step in the completion of the report, as you guys are pretty comfortable with when it comes to using our system, is to make sure that you really want to do this. I would hope you really want to do it because the activity report's necessary in order to get paid. So you'll click agree at that time. If for some reason you look at this and you say, oh, I don't want to start a February 2023 report, I want to start a February 2024 report, you can hit decline. It'll bring you back and you can start over again and make sure you choose the right report. But ultimately, if this page looks accurate, you'll just click the agree button. Once you click the agree button, it will create an activity report. So once the activity report is created, it will have its own forms listed on the left-hand side of the screen when you're in the activity report. If for some reason you didn't complete the activity report in one sitting, you can go out of IGX and come back in at a later date. If you did that, when you log in to the IGX database and are at your dashboard, that activity report that you started and is awaiting your completion will be in your My Tasks bin. That's what you see on this right-hand side. You can open it and start working on it again at any time up until you've submitted it. Once you've submitted it to us, it'll no longer show up under My Tasks, but it will be there while it's in the status for an what's called activity report initiated. You'll see it here in the middle of this section. That's what that means, is that it's in a status that you guys have something to work on. Once you've submitted it to us, it's no longer a task of yours. It becomes a task of ours for review and approval. If for some reason we find something wrong with the report, we might send it back to you. That would then put it back in your My Tasks. But initially, once you start the report, it'll be in My Tasks. Once you've submitted it, it'll no longer be there. Let's go back to the process of actually completing the report, though, because that's going to be the next steps in what you're going to be doing. So once the report is created, your navigation pane, as I said, will be on the left-hand side under Forms. Um, you can click on any one of the pages and complete them in any order in which you wish, but make sure you go to each one of the pages and complete them as necessary on a monthly basis, or update them on a monthly basis. So the first page within your activity reports is called a report type selection. You'll start by clicking on that report type selection page. This is what it'll look like, and you'll choose either an interim report or a final. Oh, that's not right. That's not right, Tammy. Shouldn't be interim or final, right?
Yes, they should all be interim and then you'll have one final report. Yep,
Oh, okay. I thought we had them titled something different. I'm sorry.
no worries.
Uh, so you'll choose the interim report. Ultimately, on a monthly basis, you'll choose interim. On the last month of the grant period, you'll choose final. Once you choose that, you click the save button, and this page is done. The next page in the activity report listing of the navigation of the report pages is the participant list page. You'll come to this page. You can use the employer field to separate your participants by employers. So if you are working with multiple employers, you can have a separate participant list page for each employer. If you're going to be one single employer, you can just enter that single employer's name here on next to employer and start entering each of your participants. Once you enter a participant, you're going to have to provide us with their first name, last name, and their USDOL apprenticeship ID number. That's the ID number that is assigned to them by utilizing the Rapids database. Then you will choose, are they choosing OJT or are we choosing OJT or RTI, Tammy? How are we doing that now?
They should choose OJT or RTI to indicate what the grant is paying for that individual.
Okay. So now you will choose either OJT or RTI based on what we're paying for that participant. If we're paying for both OJT and RTI, you'll choose both. We've gone back and forth a little bit on that step. That's why I was asking Tammy at one point. We were going to fill those out for the people. I just was double checking. The USDOL verified box, you will not check at all. We check that once we've verified in Rapids that they're registered with USDOL. Once you've completed entering the first participant, you'll hit the plus sign, and that will create a whole nother line so that you can enter the next participant. You'll do this for each participant that you need to add to your participant list for the month. You do not have to do this page every month for each participant. The participant will already be on the list from previous month, but you just need to add any new participants that were added in this previous month's time frame. Once you've completed entering all of your participants, you need to hit the save button. If for some reason you had multiple employers and you wanted to have multiple pages based on the employers, you'll hit the add button in the top right hand corner. That'll add a page, and you can create a whole nother page for that employer with their employees listed underneath them. Make sure though, once you've entered all the information about your participants, that you always click the save button. and that'll allow for you to ensure that all of your information is saved. Right. So the next page you're going to complete is called the monthly reporting page. The monthly reporting page is just that. It's going to be you reporting to us what's happened during the month in which you're reporting to us. So in the first month, the total before this reporting period will be blank or have zeros. Once that month has been completed and we move on to the next month and future months, that total before this reporting period will populate with any numbers that you've entered in the current reporting period cumulatively. So that'll be where your aggregate information on your report will show up. And then what'll happen is it'll total for the grant period. So it'll add the total before this reporting period and the current month to show what number of registered apprenticeship programs that you've gotten approved by USDOL are, and what the total number of participants that you've placed into a registered apprenticeship program are. This question one here in the second section is where you're going to list your occupations that you've registered with USDOL. You will start filling this out when you are just working on the process with registration for USDOL. When you choose the drop down under status of registration with USDOL, there'll be something that you can choose in order to show where you're at in the process. Most of you who have, well, all of you who have completed your registration will enter the occupation, choose completed, and enter the date that the program was registered with USDOL, and then add any comments next to that. If you have multiple occupations that you need to list here, you choose the plus button at the end of the line there, and that will create a whole nother line for the second occupation and for the additional information to be provided to us. We do ask that you tell us when you are working through the process of getting your registration done with USDOL, as well as also telling us when you've completed the process. It allows for us to keep track of where you're at, and in moving forward, as Tammy said in a previous slide, the first 6 months is when we give you to work out everything with USDOL, get your approvals, and then start getting participants registered. So we like to be able to see that on this page, even if you haven't actually registered any apprentices to date. We like to see that you're working with USDOL and for you to provide us comments on where exactly you are within that process with USDOL to get it approved. Question two here is where you're going to provide any updates on the status of the placement of the apprentices into apprenticeship occupations. Um, this is where will give us the details there. Question three is where you'll provide us with any barriers that you're experiencing in relation to the development of your apprenticeship program. For those of you who've already had your occupations approved or are no longer working through that, this question is going to be fairly simple on a monthly basis. You're not going to need to provide us with a whole heck of a lot other than to just state that you do not currently have any barriers. And then for question four, you're going to identify any barriers that you're having with apprentices or that your apprentices are experiencing, and what it is that you're doing in order to correct those issues. Once you've completed this page, once again, you'll make sure that you click the save button, and that will save all the information that you've entered, and then you can move on to the next page. So what you'll notice on the next section, which is the placements into registered apprenticeship occupations page, is that all of the pages for your participants are automatically created. For any of you who have been recipients of the Gaines grant in the past, this may be exciting to you because in the past you actually had to come in here and create a page for each individual. Now, the way we have it set up is once you've completed your participant list page and entered the names and information about those participants on that page, it automatically creates a placement into registered apprenticeship occupation page for each one of those participants. It will also create them if you have multiple participant list pages. You'll have every page listed here, every participant listed here under the placements into registered apprenticeship occupations. You will have to initially go into each one of these and update them. And then on a monthly basis, you'll have to go into the ones that just have information that needs to be updated within them. But in the initial month, you'll have to go in, and when you first add participants, you'll have to go in and add information about each one of those participants uh, in that corresponding month. So just important things to keep in mind. These pages are important because it's where we are able to capture all of the information on what the participants are receiving, both on a monthly basis and a year-to-date basis with working through your program. Um, and that's why this is important. But you'll notice there's a little arrow next to the page. When you click on that arrow, it'll open up all of the pages that are listed within that section. That little arrow would also be next to participant list if you created multiple participant list pages by clicking the add button in the top corner like I showed you earlier. Once you click on that arrow, you'll click on the name of the participant in which you need to update, and it'll bring you into the page for that participant. It's a little small to see here, but ultimately we require you to provide us with a good amount of information on each participant. Not all of these fields are going to need to be filled out on a monthly basis. A lot of them are going to be filled out, um, in the beginning. The top sections about the apprentice are filled out in the beginning in the first month of accepting them into the program. Their sponsor information and their NAICS employer information will all be filled out as soon as you accept them into the program and that they've been registered with USDOL. If their employer information is separate or different from the sponsor information, you'll enter the employer information. But if the employer and the sponsor are the same, you're just going to choose this checkbox stating that the employer and the sponsor are the same. And then you'll provide us with some training milestones, any certification information if certifications are issued to the participants, and any college credit information if any college credit is attained by your participants while they're going through your process. You'll notice that there's a plus sign next to the training milestones, certification information, and the college credit information. The reasoning for that is that they may get multiple training milestones or multiple certifications or multiple college credits. You would be able to add the multiples by choosing the plus sign and entering the additional information in the next line that would be created at that time. You'll also notice that when there's information that is necessary to be filled out in a section, that it'll have a red box around it. That's telling you that you need to provide details in that section. So this red box at the top here is telling you that all three of these first three lines have information that need to be provided. Uh, the plus the red box being having a circle around it here is telling you that that section has some information, and so on and so forth throughout these. So the sponsor information is telling you that it's necessary to fill out information on this section. The the error message that will correspond to these red boxes will also give you details on what it is that you're missing that you need to provide. If for some reason the error message is not clear and you're not quite sure exactly what information you're missing, you could always reach out to us and we'll help you figure out exactly what information you need to provide to us. We'll also be checking and balancing this on a monthly basis to see if and make sure that all information that's necessary is there. We can and we'll find things as we go through this process to ensure that you understand what it is you need to provide to us and what needs to be captured on your participants. Um, Ultimately, though, once you've completed entering all the information on this page, it's very important to always remember to click the save button, and then you can navigate to the next apprentice that you need to update. You'll have this page to complete on each one of your apprentices. So that's something to just make sure that you're aware of and staying on top of, and make sure that you provide us with all of the information necessary in order for us to be able to track where your apprentices are within the process of um, the apprenticeship. Okay, so is there anything additional you want to add to that, Tammy, just to make sure there's nothing I'm missing or that I should go over?
Sure. So initially, it's going to be a lot of information to enter for each as you're adding new apprentices. But then what you should be doing on a monthly basis once that apprentice is in your program is just visiting this page and making updates. So if for some reason their performance changes or their progress with USDOL, like their status if they're canceled, you need to update that information. Some fields that get skipped all the time on updates too are the total OJT and RTI hours to date. We would imagine that at least one of those fields would be updating on a monthly basis. Otherwise, it doesn't look like the apprentice is doing anything. So just make sure that you're revisiting those particular fields and then adding, of course, any milestones and credentials as they're progressing through the program and obtaining those things.
Correct. And it's very important. So just to point out, the total OJT hours and RTI hours are entered in the fourth box set of boxes down from the top. And it's also where you'll list whether it's satisfactory or unsatisfactory the apprentice is working through those processes. Um, and it's also very important that you do not put in a cancellation unless a cancellation is actually occurred with that apprentice, or a completion with USDOL. You don't want to enter any dates into those boxes on the third row down unless their apprenticeship has been canceled with USDOL or unless they've completed their apprenticeship with USDOL. And that is information is reflected within the Rapids database. So the next page that you'll complete is your OJT apprenticeship wage reimbursement page. Um, this is where you're going to list any participants that are receiving OJT wage reimbursement, and you'll enter them here. And this information does pull over from last month to this month, so you'll just have to fill in any updates to those to the fields in box to the boxes that you see here. So um, the initial thing that you'll want to do is add a page name to it. It may just be page one. It could also be the employer name. So if you have multiple employers, you can list the page name as the employer that in which all of these apprentices that are listed on the OJT page work with. Um, if you want to have a page for each employer, you would enter the employer name as the page name, save the page, and then hit add, and then create another page for the other employer. But ultimately, you couldn't do it either way. You can do it by employer name, or you can just list them all on one OJT apprenticeship wage reimbursement page. It's really up to you which way you do it. Just make sure you're consistent across your participant list pages and this. It just helps to make things cleaner and clearer. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to click on the drop down arrow under name of apprentice and choose the apprentice in which you're going to be entering information um, about OJT wage reimbursement. The list that will pull up on that drop down will be those that you've entered on the participant list page. So obviously you'll have to complete the participant list page prior to completing this page. You choose the apprentice, it will populate the USDOL apprenticeship ID number and the occupation. You'll choose whether you're asking for reimbursement for OJT or RTI. The cumulative number of hours will populate if this person was listed on the previous month's reports. It will populate with the cumulative number, and then you'll enter the number of hours in which you're asking for reimbursement this month in the number of hours. Remember, you can only ask for up to 40 hours of reimbursement at a 50% rate of reimbursement. So for example, as you see at the top, 20 hours of OJT at $16 an hour is $320. So the reimbursement should be no more than $160 because that's half of the $320 that you paid out to, or that the employer paid out to this participant. Okay, so in the 58% hourly wage amount, you'll enter their hourly wage. So in the case of the example, you'd enter $16. I'm sorry, $8. You'd enter $8. The actual starting wage, you would enter the $16. And then the total funds requested for OJT, you would enter the $160. In the match, you'd enter the other $160 to equal out to the 320 used based on this example. And then the source for cost sharing or match would be to would be most likely employer, to show that the employer is paying the match column's amount of funding, which is the other 50% of funding. And then the name of the employer is going to be a drop down. You'll choose that drop down, and it'll show us all the employers that are on your employer sponsor page there. You'll choose which employer and then make sure you save the page. That will be completion of the OJT apprenticeship wage reimbursement for one participant. If you need to add any additionals, you use the plus sign at the end and you follow the same exact process to complete the OJT apprentice wage reimbursement for the next participant. Um, Once you've completed entering all of the information, you save the page and the total OJT costs will populate automatically based on what it is that we're going to pay out or what we're being asked to pay out for OJT costs for that month. Okay, if it seems much more confusing than it will be once you get started doing it, just remember that if you have any questions while completing this page, reach out to us and we'll assist you in any way we can to make sure that you accurately complete this page and understand exactly what it is that we're looking for. Um, and then month after month, you'll get comfortable because you're going to basically be filling in just certain sections of this page on a monthly basis. All right, always remember to click the save button and when you're finished, and then you can move on to the next step in the process. The next step is the miscellaneous attachments page, which ultimately allows for you to provide to us any proof or any additional supporting materials that you need to provide to us for the documents in which you've completed already on the previous pages. So for those of you who are doing OJT, you'll need to come to this miscellaneous attachments page and provide us with payroll records based on what you have on that OJT page. Um, the payroll records are what we utilize in order to be able to reference back to for reimbursement and make sure that what we're paying out is equivalent to what it is that you've paid out already. Remember, we only pay 50% of the salary up until your contracted allowance. Um, when you completed your budget, you told us, you were going to have 40 participants, and they were going to make, I'm making this number up, but $3,200 per participant in OJT. We calculate and make sure that you're staying in line with that based on what your contract states on the OJT page. And then we check and balance it against their payroll records here, which is what you'll provide to us. You can also provide any other records that you'd like to provide, but ultimately this page is mostly used for OJT and payroll records to be uploaded. You'll enter into the description. What I would suggest you enter is the name of the participant and payroll records, and then you upload or you click select and you upload the payroll records here. You can also drag the files from one section to this little section of the white part of this page of this box, and it will automatically upload the documents. That works 95% of the time, but some people have difficulties dragging it to the appropriate place. Sometimes it's easier just to hit select and find the document within your computer and choose to add it to the and to attach it to the document. Always remember once you've finished entering any of your attachments here to save the page. Once you save the page, then you've completed this section. So the final couple of steps now have nothing to do with actually completing pages within the document. The first thing you're going to want to do is a document validation. This can be found by scrolling down on the menu, which is that blue section on the left-hand side of your screen, and finding the Tools section. Under Tools, this what is it, the sixth thing down, you'll see document validation. You'll click on it, and what it would do is check and validate that none of your pages within this activity report have any errors. If they don't, then it'll come up blank and you can move on. If anything comes up, you can click on the form name and it'll bring you to that page so that you can update and get rid of any errors that are showing up on the page. Um, Once you've completed them and you do a document validation and it comes up clean, you can move on to the next step. That next step is going to be the most important step. It's where you're actually submitting your activity report. You'll do the same thing. You'll scroll down to the bottom on that left-hand panel and find status options and choose activity report submitted under status options. Once you do that, this panel will pop up asking you if you're sure you want to submit it. By this point, you will be very happy to get it out of your hands and move it on so that you don't have to look at it anymore and choose OK really quickly. But if for some reason you've decided that that's not what you want to do, you can choose cancel and it'll bring you right back and nothing will have changed. Once you submit it to us, um, there's nothing further that you need to do at that point. We'll review it and make sure that it looks accurate and complete. If for some reason we find that something is missing and that there's something else that you need to come to do, we'll send it back to you and notify you when we do so and let you know what it is you need to complete at that time. But and then you can follow the process to resubmit it back to us once you've made those changes and updates. Right. So that was the activity report process. I know it seems like a lot. It is a lot, but once you get comfortable doing it and once you've entered the preliminary information, mostly on a monthly basis, you're coming in here and just adding information on your participants. Every time you add any participants, then obviously you'll have to complete the full process on that participant, but it does get easier as you do it, and once you do one, the rest kind of um, get a little less cumbersome. Uh, so anyway, where we are right now is we're back um, either in the activity report or we're on the application. Okay, so imagine you just completed your activity report. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom on that left-hand part of your panel, you'll find related documents listed there again. Underneath it, you can initiate a new related document for an expenditure report right there. Or if you logged out of IGX and logged back in, you open the application as I showed you in the beginning of this slideshow, and it will bring up your application, and then you'll scroll down to the bottom and you'll see related documents at the bottom of that form field. Okay. Always look for related documents and choose initiate related document on either the activity report or in the application itself. Once you do that, once again, you're going to have to choose the available documents that you're looking to complete. In this case, you're going to look for gains expenditure reports because this is how you're going to get paid. It's important to know the differentiation between activity reports and expenditure reports. Make sure that you're starting an activity report to report your activities. You only have to do one a month, so don't do more than one in a month. And make sure you are starting your expenditure reports to report any expenses that you need reimbursement for. You only need to do one of those on a monthly basis, so please make sure you're only doing one. Same as I said on the activity reports, you're going to be doing these reports based on the previous month. So if we're in the month of July, when you open this report, you're going to find gains expenditure report June 2023. If you're starting anything other than a June report and it's July, there's a problem. Okay, so always make sure that you're starting the report for the previous month. That's the easiest way to explain it. And always make sure that you're paying attention to the year at the end to ensure you're opening the proper report for the month in which you're trying to submit your expenditures for. Once you choose the proper available document, you'll hit the create button and that will then give you the agree button. You will review everything on this section, and if you are good with it, you click agree and it will create the expenditure report that you're trying to get completed. If for some reason there was something on the page that didn't make sense, you can hit decline and nothing will have been created. So you didn't do anything to cause any problems. Once you click the create button, it will then create the actual expenditure report, and it will create a forms menu specific to the expenditure report as you see here on the right hand side of your screen. There are much less pages, which makes everybody happy on the expenditure report than there are on the um, activity reports. Um, the first page on the expenditure report is your gains expenditure report. You can start by clicking on that and it'll bring you to what you see on the screen. Your expenditure report page basically is a copy of your cost summary within your budget. The budget that you submitted and got approved by us, and that we added to your contract. Okay, so it'll list all your personnel costs, non-personnel costs, related technical instruction costs, and your on-the-job training costs. In this first section under grant request, that will say what you requested and how much it was for each one of those line items, and then it'll give a total budget. The next section, amount expended to date, will be any expenses that incurred previous to this period, this month that you're asking for funding. And then current expenses is where you're going to list the current month's billing that you're requesting from us. Remember, it's reimbursement, so it's reimbursement for whatever it is that you're saying you've expended this month, this previous month. You'll enter into the boxes that you see that are available. May have more boxes on yours or less boxes on yours. This is just a sample, but ultimately you'll enter the amounts here, and then the available balance will calculate based on what's in the grant request, what's in the amount expended to date, and what you're asking to spend this current month. If this is a negative amount, there's a problem. It means you're billed for more than what you've budgeted. So you need to go back and look at that and reduce what your current expenses are in order to remove any negative amounts in your available balance. Um, Once you've completed entering all of this information, you'll click the save button. If you don't have any expenses for the month, you do not need to come in here and enter zeros necessarily on all these sections. You come in, check the box at the top where it says check here if there are no expenditures to report this month, save the page, and then you can consider this completed. And then you can move on to the next page. The next page is your miscellaneous attachments page. This is where you'll provide your payroll records and documents that are required for your OJT reimbursement. So I know I said you can put it in your activity report. Technically, it's not mandatory that you put your OJT payroll records in activity reports. It is mandatory, though, that you provide them here in the expenditure reports. If you wanted to put them in both places, it's perfectly fine to do so. But I believe, Tammy, you only check to make sure that you have it here on the expenditure reports, right?
We usually like to have it with the expenditure report since it's a financial piece, but honestly, as long as we have it somewhere, I'm not too picky about it. It's fine.
Okay. So if you did enter it on the activity reports, no worries. She can check it there, but ultimately, um, we do ask that you try and include that information here on the expenditure reports. And if you don't put it on the activity reports, that's fine. Once again, you'll enter the description, which in this case, we'd want you to enter the name of the participant and OJT or payroll records or pay stubs or something like that, and then upload the file. Once you've completed entering all of the information necessary on this page, you'll click the save button, and that will allow for you to move on to the next step. The final thing you'll want to complete is your payment voucher. When you go to your payment voucher page, which is on that drop down menu under the forms menu on the left hand side, you'll find payment voucher. When you click on it, you'll notice that your payment address is pre-filled, your vendor ID number is pre-filled, the total amount will pre-fill, and it'll show how much you put on your expenditure report here at the end of this section. You're going to check the box under payee declaration, stating that you're certifying that the amount on this payment voucher matches what's on the expenditure report. If you came to this page and the amount that's under total amount did not match what you have on your expenditure report, notify us and we'll make sure it gets fixed. There's an error somewhere. If it does match, you check this box. You can add a description of the amount if you wanted to. You could put, I don't know, June 2023 uh, payment for services, whatever you wanted to. But ultimately, all you need to do on this page is check and balance the total amount versus the expenditure report and check this box. Once you've done that, you click save and you've completed this page. The last step that you need to follow. I'm just going to go back. The last step you need to follow after completing this page is doing that same document validation that I showed you in the activity report. You'll want to do that. You rotate the tools section on the left-hand side of your forms menu and click on document validation under tools. It will validate that you don't have any errors on your payment voucher, your miscellaneous attachments, or your expenditure report. If there aren't any, then you can move on to the next step. If there are, then click on the pages and go to those pages and update and get rid of those errors. But once that document validation comes up clean, you can then scroll down to the bottom on that same left-hand side of your screen menu, find status options, and choose expenditure report submitted, review required. That will be the only status that you should see there. But ultimately, once you click that, it will come to us for us to review and approve. When you click it, you'll have to choose OK again, because for whatever reason, we just never trust ourselves. So systems double check everything 35 times. But once you've clicked OK, it'll submit it to us for review. We'll review it and get it to our fiscal department so that we can try and get payment out to you as soon as possible. If for any reason during our review process we find any issues with the document, we'll notify you at that time and tell you what needs to be updated. Once again, always feel free to reach out to us with any questions or any confusion that you run into while filling out the reports. But ultimately, I anticipate in a short period of time, you'll get very comfortable with them. And for those of you who have done these types of reports with us in the past, it's really not much different than the way you did it before, except for you might be logging into a different database. All right, so Tammy, do you want to take over one more time and bring us back to our other slideshow?
Absolutely.
We will make sure to get to you this slideshow that we just went over, the user guide, um, right after this meeting, and you can share it with anybody on your team um, that needs to utilize it on a monthly basis. But as I said, don't let yourselves get overwhelmed. It's a lot of information. We know that. That's why we do this in this kind of setting. We record this video. We're going to have it posted on our YouTube page so that we can get it out to you guys so that you can refer back to it at any time if necessary. We also give you the user guide to utilize manually and to share with staff that may be doing this in your absence or as well as you. Um, so we get it. We completely understand the fact that it's a lot of information, but we're always available to help and assist if necessary. Next slide. All right. So for those of you who have questions to run by USDOL, who haven't started your registration with a USDOL or are in the process of registering with USDOL, this is the contact information for the representatives by county, as well as the state director for USDOL. You can email them based on the county in which you reside, your program resides. So if you are in any of the counties under Nicole Field, you can reach out to her or Chris Lee or Joe Mancini or John Martinez. And if you're having no luck reaching out to them, feel free to reach out to Michael Blatt, State Director. He is always willing to assist if anybody's having any issues. Next slide. And finally, the Office of Apprenticeship contact information is listed here. Jim Manning, who a lot of you have spoken to in the past or have worked with in the past, is the chief of our programs and contracts area. Once again, my name is Bill Sarbuck, and I'm the supervisor over the contract and programs area, or programs and contracts area, whatever they want to call us today. And then Tammy Novatin is your direct contact within our unit, but you also can reach out to the entire unit through using the apprenticeship unit at dol.nj.gov email address that's listed here on the right-hand side at the bottom. That comes to all of us. So if Tammy was out for some reason, uh, we could all help and assist to the best of our abilities and as quickly as we possibly can, so you're not waiting around. Per se, if Tammy went on vacation or something, God forbid, Tammy, you better not go on vacation. No, I'm joking. But at the end of the day, that's what we're here for, and we all try to help as much as we can whenever we can. So always feel free to reach out to any one of us on the page. So lastly, I want to open it up. Does anybody have any questions, any comments? Yes, Jeff's like, get out of there. Um, any questions, any comments? Feel free to type them in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask them. Please feel free at this point to do whatever it works best for you. Just check in. Yes, we will be sharing the PowerPoint. And that's all I have in here. Nobody else asked any questions in the chat,
You
so
guys are great. These slideshows are super informative, and I appreciate all your help with everything.
no problem. Thank you. All right, Melissa Rodriguez asked if our grant is being used to support RTI costs and there are no other budget line items in our grant award, if we have no apprentices enrolled for the reporting period, do we still need to submit an activity and expenditure report? Very good question, Melissa. Yes. We still ask that you submit an activity and expenditure report, even though you don't have anything to report for the month. It allows for us to ensure that we know that you don't have anything to submit to us. It stops us from reaching out to you to ask a question. And we don't like to bog down your emails as well. And we also don't want to leave it open to where next month you could accidentally open the wrong report. So yes, we do ask that if you have nothing to report, you open the expenditure report and check that box at the top that I showed you, or in the activity report, you would just open it and go down and submit it by changing the status at the bottom of the page.
There will be some initial information though that and some comments. So we want to know what's going on with your program, right? So if,
Right, the
with your
monthly reporting
activity, make
page. Yep.
sure, yeah, make sure you're still adding a couple comments about what kind of progress you're making towards getting apprentices or developing your program so that we at least have some context and don't have to bug you.
All right. There's always something, Melissa. Never know. You could just tell us that you were wishing Tammy a vacation, like Jeff, to go on vacation. You could report whatever you'd like to us, but no, we like to know where you're at in the process, even if you're not completed yet. So, any other questions, comments? This would be the first group without comments ever. No, I'm joking. Well, just know we appreciate your time and being here with us. We get, like I said earlier, the overwhelmingness, if that's a word, of this process. Um, but we're very excited to get started. I'm sure you guys are as well. Um, and we're here to help in any way we can, whether it's helping with the process of getting your reports completed and submitted on a monthly basis, or contacting USDOL and any struggles you're having there, or anything that may be getting in the way of your process when it comes to anything else, whether it be other state agencies or employers or whatever. Sometimes we can be of assistance and we're here to help if we can. So always feel free to reach out and we will try to assist as much as we can at all times. In the meantime, though, we'll be looking forward to getting those reports from you guys here in the next couple weeks. As I said, they are due technically by the 15th, but Tammy said that it was okay if you guys got them in within the first, by the end of the month. And I want to make sure that we try and stick to that timeline as best we can, because it does get difficult when you run into next month. Like I said before, the easiest way to know you're starting the right report is to look at today's date. So it's July 12th. I should be starting a June report. If you don't start your June report until August 1st, you're going to get confused. I promise you. It's not your fault. It's just easy to confuse yourself because there's so many reports listed. So always be try and stay on top of getting these reports submitted. Tammy's really good about sending out, as well as the rest of the team, they're really good about sending out reminders to you saying your report is due on X date. So, that will help you as well. But in the meantime, get those reports started. They should be all there for you to start now. You don't have to wait if you don't want to. Capellia, if you want to go do that homework tonight, go right ahead. I told my kids, just because it's summer, it doesn't mean there's no homework, right? No, actually, my daughter asked me yesterday, how come you have to work in the summer, Dad? And I was like, oh, how do I explain this one to her? I was like, well, there's real life and then there's school. So it was hard to explain. But at the end of the day, like I said, if anything comes up and you guys need assistance, please feel free to reach out to us. Exactly, yes. You know that trip you wanted to take doesn't just happen. Somebody has to pay for that, right? Right. So I don't see any additional questions or comments coming in. So I'd like to end with a thank you once again. Um, and we will be in touch shortly here once we get started and moving forward. And as I said before, always feel free to reach out to us with anything you need help with. Thank you all so much.